Hey D&D fam. I'm Quick.
And I'm Lee, and you're listening to
Divas and Ducats. So what is a diva? I think divas get a bad rep. But to me, diva is all about the attitude.
As for ducats, it's your finances, your assets, Skrilla, guap, your coin. We're talking all things with the potential to affect your pockets.
And while we're attorneys by trade, we are divas by choice. Divas and Ducats is for edutainment purposes.
Y'all, we are not Series 511 or 703 professionals. This does not create a financial advisor or attorney-client relationship. The views expressed here are solely our opinions and the opinions of our guests.
It's just our opinions, y'all. Okay, divas, let's talk ducats.
Hey D&D fam, welcome back.
Yes, welcome.
All right, 2021 is almost over. I'm sure many of you are thinking about starting a new job, probably. It's been a long year for some. You know, some people I've seen on social media feel some kind of way about your jobs.
And those be those J1 goals.
Yes, so I think a lot of times most people know kind of fourth quarter slows down for those looking for jobs, but the top of the year ramps back up. And so we brought for our Diva Docket today, we're going to discuss like those interviews and resumes that make the difference in you getting that new position and you moving on to greener pastures. And so we brought a subject matter expert on the topic in today so she can help you get that new check. So today we have Courtney Rhodes, and we are going to let her introduce herself. Welcome,
Courtney.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So tell our family who you are, what you do, how did you get into it?
So my name is Courtney Rhodes, and I am founder and owner of the Career Society. I have been in the HR and recruitment space for the last 10 years. Ironically enough, I graduated from law school in the middle of the recession. And luckily enough, I was not looking to practice traditionally anyway. I wanted to find something where I could go into corporate and figure it out. And so as everything worked itself out, I got a job working in recruitment and legal staffing, and which taught me everything I needed to know about the HR and recruitment side. And then from there, I really carved out a niche in corporate after that, to where, I was, working with attorneys and executives. They wanted to work with me because of my background, because of my degrees, because I could understand the language. And then I moved into the Career Society. I worked for some time at a law school that was here in Charlotte. And so that component brought out career counseling, coaching. And really, after I left there, the students pushed me to say, hey, you don't work at the school anymore. What do you charge? Like, what's your business? Like you can't just do my resume.
You can't just drop us.
Yeah, you don't work for the school.
Right.
It pushed me to become legal, I guess, for business purposes. And I've had the Career Society for 4 years now. It's also turned into full HR operations. So I have clients, small business clients, who I work with, and I do their HR services from beginning to end. Everything from the terminations, the onboarding, setting it up, managing the systems. So I feel very blessed in how the business has turned into something totally different. So I get to manage businesses and coach them on the HR side. And I also get to coach professionals and push them to that next level. So it's been an interesting ride for sure.
I love that. Duly noted. So we love a good name. So I know you say you have the Career Society, but there's also the Career Whisperer. How did that come into play?
That came from the law school as well. That came from my colleague. So they was like, you always give these kids jobs. Like the whisper when it comes to that. And so it stuck, and I was like, you know what? I should really own that. There's something to that. So I just stuck with it.
Yeah, I love that name.
Right. It's definitely a niche. And so what are, people are starting to apply and, have that resume. I know at one point I was guilty of not really tailoring it. And so what are some of the, having that HR background, some of the most common mistakes you see people making, like on their resumes and in their interviews?
I would say the number one mistake on a resume is not tailoring. So you get a resume done. I think that's probably like the biggest faux pas for people when they have their resume done once by someone else. Oh, I got it done by someone else. I can just shoot this out to every position.
Right.
It's not true. You have to make sure that it's tailored for each position. You want to make sure that the requirements are there. You want to speak the language that they speak. I would say that's at the top of the list when it comes to resumes. People say, well, I have that experience. Well, is it on your resume? Is it like clear on your resume that you have 5 years or you served or you managed? Like you have to make it plain, because if you can't get past the resume, we can't get to the interview component where you can explain yourself.
Right.
So yeah. So, and then I would say in interviews, the biggest thing is people really not knowing their experience. Not knowing that you have the 5 years of experience that they're looking for, or providing me an eloquent example of the work that you did for practicing. So when I work with some of my clients, they'll say, oh yeah, I have that experience. Well, why didn't you say that? I didn't think about it, because you're it's you.
Right.
So you don't you don't give yourself the credit that you deserve. So a lot of times I make them write it out. Okay, write it out. Let's get it all out. Let's package it up. And when they ask you, do you have this experience? You have it, and be confident about it. Don't feel like you're fudging your resume or your background. You have the experience. Just go with it confidently.
Yeah. And so speaking of fudging,
I know. I was like, Lee.
So a lot of times, and I think we spoke on it before, as women, we tend to see these 10, bullet points they'll put on a requisition and feel like, oh, I don't have all 10, let me just not. Whereas the statistics show that men will just do it. They just will go for it and apply, and they might have 5 of them. And so what is the line between beefing up your resume and lying?
Okay. So I think it's twofold question. It's a twofold question. So the one, that is true. Women will not apply to a job unless they have 100%. 100% of the preferred and required. You're right. Statistics show that. But if you have at least 75% or more, I would say go for it. If you feel that if there's 1 or 2 that you're looking at in the requires that you don't meet, particularly the soft skills. If they're saying someone who's super energetic, like you can't. That's not a requirement. I mean, it's not a requirement. Like, how do you measure energy? You know what I mean? Like, or how do you manage that someone is a strong, analytical? Like, those are just buzzwords. Like, get down to the meat. Do you have the X amount of years of experience that they have? They're asking for. Do you have the skill set? Are you lacking it by a year or 2? Whatever. Go ahead and apply to the job. They're going to ask you, in some instances, they may ask you qualifying questions. Like if you don't have the experience, you don't. You have to say no. You have to move on. But if they don't, go for it. Submit your resume and go for it. Go with what you have. Present it to the best of your ability. Put it on a silver platter. They're either going to say yes or no. Now, lying, you don't want to do that. If you don't have the 10 years of experience and you just have 5, don't put the 10 years of, it's going to show. They're asking for 10 years of experience for a reason. So don't get to the extreme of lying on your resume. Be sure that you're honest about what you have on there, but don't be afraid to utilize what you actually have. I think a lot of people are afraid of that. A quick example, I had a male and a female that went out for a position. And I'll just say the female was way more qualified for the role, but the male that applied to the position, and they both interviewed for the role, the male was way more confident. He asked for more money. He just had all of these, like, I know I belong here. And the female was like, I'm very thankful to be on the phone with you. You got 20 plus years of experience and you were surprised that I called you. They both got the job because there was 2 openings. The male asked for $20,000 more. He got it. The female, she was happy to just have the salary that he offered, which was $20,000 to $30,000 less.
So he made a $50,000 difference.
Yes, it was a $30,000 difference. One that I'm still trying to figure out how, you had so much confidence and you didn't have it. And then the other who should have had the confidence and should have had the money.
Right.
So, so you just have to go boldly when you're looking at that.
And that's going to continue to build, because when you think about bonuses, that difference is going to just get bigger, especially if she doesn't go and advocate for I'm overqualified. Run me my money. Don't say it like that.
You embody the attitude.
Right, the attitude. Because I'm sure that's how he would have done. This is what it is. This is my offer.
Right. So when you speak about tailoring the resume, I know people with the requisitions, there's these keywords, right, which you were speaking to.
Buzzwords.
Yes. Is it true? Is there some little technology that's basically... Are they really reading your resumes, or is there some kind of system that is basically vetting it for these keywords?
Is there a bot?
So it's both.
Okay.
So there is a system that does read your resume for buzzwords. However, they're still human beings.
Okay.
Me being one of them. I still contract in corporate America as a recruiter, and I still read resumes. I still go through and read resumes and review them to make sure there are years of experience. Now, there are systems to ask to vet you out. So again, like I told you guys, they may ask some pre-qualifying questions to just see, if you don't have a law degree and you're applying for a legal position, you don't have a license, then okay, I don't even need to look at your resume.
Right.
You don't qualify. So there are pre-qualifying questions, but there are still human eyes that sit on resume. I always get really irritated when people say no, someone's looking at your resume. It happens to be me. You were rejected by a human being. Take the rejection and the correction and move on.
Right.
So no, there are human beings that are still sitting and reviewing resumes for sure.
Okay. That's good to know.
And so with the resume, what is your opinion on cover letters? Are they dated? Do they actually help? Do y'all read those too?
You want me to tell y'all a secret?
Tell us the secrets.
I hate them.
Really?
I don't like them.
Oh.
I don't like them.
You don't like my 2-page cover letter?
2 pages?
No, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Definitely not 2 pages. No, ma'am. So I don't. I think, and here's me just being honest. It's about time. It's about being conscientious of my time as well as your time. And I really focus on the candidate's time. So if you put it in there, I feel obligated to read it. Why? Because you put it in there. So let me read it, because I know it took the time to do it. But if it's not required, this is what I'll say. If it is not required, please don't put it in there.
Okay.
Because why? Because you run the risk of someone not reading it and you've wasted your time. And your time is money.
Yeah.
And so as a candidate, you want to be able to give quality. You want to be able to, say I can listen. You didn't ask for it. It wasn't required. You asked for a resume. You asked that I have X amount. I gave you everything that was required. Okay. And then you want to be effective and efficient. So if you're writing all these resumes and you got to tailor the resumes and you're tailoring the cover letter, that's a lot of time that you're losing when that's one other position that you could have applied to. So my rule of thumb, if it's not required, do not send it. If it is one page, and then you move on.
I have so much to say.
One quick, it's like that should be a quick elevator pitch.
Right.
It is a hello, this is my experience. I look forward to meeting and speaking with you. So it's kind of like boom, boom,
3 paragraphs. Be
Get
done.
to the point and move on. Again, it's about time. Even if they make it required, you want to be quick. You want to get in and out.
Yeah. So when we're talking about length, because I will say, not so much cover letter wise, but I struggle with that with resumes, right? As you get further in your career, you've been in the game more. So how long should your resume be? Do you have to whittle it down to 1 page and kind of limit the years that you're showing, or is 2 pages okay? Like, what is the flavor or the feel for maybe recruiters such as yourself?
Yeah, really good question. So, and it's a fair question because So many people struggle with that. Well, I have 20 years of experience. You want one page? No.
Right.
2 pages is acceptable, especially if you have, I would say if you have really 5+ years of experience. 2 pages, if you've got community service, you've got boards, you've got things of that nature, 2 pages. 3, my rule of thumb is that you want to check and make sure that everything is necessary to go into that resume. Going back to tailoring your resume, sometimes you don't need to put all your experience on that position.
Right.
So that can take you down to 2 pages, or 2.5. Like I said, 2.5, 2.5 is a good range.
Okay.
When you get to that 3, you really want to say, is this necessary for this particular job?
Right.
Or is it necessary, period? Is it adding value?
Right.
Start to ask those questions. Now, when you go past that range of a 4, 5, I've even seen 10-page resumes.
Oh, wow.
That's a book.
You really have to have a self-assessment. President Obama would not have a 10-page resume. You know what I mean? And he was the president of the United States. So that should give you a good range of like 2.5 to, I would say 3. Again, 3 if it's qualified experience and work is great. And I will say this one disclaimer: the government is different. So the government requires a lot more years of experience. They require a lot more information. They want the salary. They have a whole lot of just objectives that they have on there. So if you're going for a government position, your resume is going to be a little bit longer, and it's not going to qualify in that 2.5, 3 pages experience.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I definitely want to reiterate what you said about tailoring, especially your older experience, right? Because most of us, you say you came straight out of law school and went into something that you're kind of passionate about now, and it has grown. But there are people that have been all over the place in their careers, right? So even though you might not have that, even though you have that 20 years of experience, maybe only the last 10 years are relevant. So if you want to show your longevity, those 10 years that aren't necessarily relevant, have 1 or 2 bullet points there instead of everything you did, and then the ones that are more relevant, put more bullet points. Like you said, just tailoring that resume so you can still have it, but not be so wordy and everything.
And to that point, when you bring up the rule of thumb is 10 years.
Okay.
So you want to present your 10 years, the recent 10 years of experience. One thing that I will do, let's say your experience is relevant for those previous times. I'll just have a quick blurb, like you said, and I will say previous experience or past experience. And there will be a small area for them, and it'll just talk about it. You may put the years. You have to be very cognizant about years, because sometimes, in some cases, you don't want to date yourself. So you may just want to put that you had 5 years at that job, or 4 years at that job, or 10, or whatever, just to show that you had the experience. So there are very crafty ways to get the job done, and to also rebrand. You made another point about people not having sometimes all over the place when it comes to experience. You can bring it home. It's just about you having the end goal in mind. What are you trying to do? And then after that, take all your experience and rebrand it to what you needed and streamline it. Nobody needs to know that you were in a bad situation or wasn't a good job. They just need to know you had it. You know what I mean? They don't need to that you was going through.
Do not badmouth managers on a resume. Please don't badmouth your managers on a resume.
It comes out. But they don't need to know that. You need to come wrapped in a pretty red bow when they see you.
And that, you mentioned something that I definitely hadn't even thought about, like ageism, when that comes in, like through your resume and into an interview, like how important, I guess not even important, but relevant, like people that have that concern, is it a legitimate concern, especially when you talk about these more senior roles, right? We're presuming that they're going to go to people that have the years of experience, and then to do that, you have to have the age. But how does that play with your interviews and resumes?
Yeah.
It is true, and sad, it does exist. And it's not because someone was like, oh, he's 85. We don't want to hire him for that. But think about it. We live in a very high-tech society where everything is systems. Like, I can't think of one job that I can think of. Legal has technology. customer service, even if you were looking at call centers, they're all tech, it's all systems and technology now.
Right.
So, the concern that when I've worked with hiring managers in the past is, do I have to teach this person this system? Are they going to be able to keep up? If we decide to do a full overhaul and a different integration, will this person have a learning curve? And no more than anyone else if they're open to it.
Right.
I know people that are young that are opposed to technology. I wouldn't hire them for a tech job or any job.
Right.
They don't like technology and they refuse to come into the 21st century.
Right.
So I always go push back on that and say, hey, it's not really an age thing. It's more of a mental mindset.
Right.
The other thing that I've noticed when it comes to age is sometimes in their interviews, they've not, again, because you have so much years of experience, you're not, the continuing education is not there. So you do show signs that you would not be flexible and agile. You're not open to change. Because, I know what I've been in this area for 40 years.
Right.
It's been done all the time.
Right.
Never changes. Like, there's certain buzzwords that people can say in those interviews that can show signs of you're not qualified. So it's more of you. It's more of a personality trait than age.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And so it made me think, when you were talking about like the technology, I think another thing probably especially women do is, let's say like you have an interest, but you don't have maybe like word for word experience. So I'll like, as an example, like I know people in legal that maybe they've just done like contracts because you could get siloed, right? But then they want to do something maybe in commercial or security. So they have legal experience, but they're not in that particular field. What are some of the things that they can do to like still make themselves attractive for those roles that they're now, interested in?
That's a good question. I would say if there's a certification that job requires, for example, I just off the top of my head, compliance. So there's the CAM certification that you could do for compliance. What can you do in your current role to gain the experience of compliance? Well, compliance is really just making sure that you align with the law. And whatever you're doing, whatever group you're in, everybody is adhering to the federal or state regulations. That's it. That's all it is.
Right.
And making sure that you mitigate risk or avoid risk as much as possible. Is there something in your current role that you can do? Raise your hand to do a stretch assignment or whatever so that you can get that experience to put on your resume. Is there something that you can volunteer to do? One of my favorite clients has a resume that she's built from volunteering. And that volunteering turned into a job for her. So at one point she was in corporate as well as volunteering, and she could pull out anyone at any given time and say, okay, where can I go? Because she couldn't get it in corporate, she decided to get it on her volunteer time. So you may want to look at something where you can volunteer or get an extra role. Maybe look at with a small business that maybe you can consult. You just got to get the experience so that you can have it on your resume. Now, we'll also say start to network with people in the area because you may not be far off. They may say, oh, based on the experience that you're telling me you have right now, you should go ahead and apply to that. We actually need that skill set in order to help us. We'll teach you everything else.
Right.
Me, for example, I had a JD, they said a JD, and I didn't have that experience. And they said, hey, we'll teach you those things. We'll teach you how to recruit. We'll teach you HR. We like that you have the JD because the JDs are not walking around all the time. We just, we can help you do all the rest of that stuff. So I am a firm believer of just going for what you know. If you want to do it, and see where it lands.
I had to rub my girl's shoulder because that's how she softball knocked hers out the park into her role, right? Using
I was gonna use her.
Look, I'm putting it out there. Not specifically what she did, but she knocked that out the park by using her.
She definitely did.
Yeah. So
I am extremely proud of her for that.
Me too.
She did.
Me too.
She took experience from an area and said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to merge. I want to blend into that. And to be quite frank, she had the experience.
Right.
She did everything.
Right.
Actually, she was more than qualified because it's very difficult to find attorneys with the experience of the job that she was going for.
Right.
And so and then you'll remember, I told you this. You are way more qualified than you know for this job. All you got to do is walk into it.
She did, because I was in nerd mode. Like, okay, so I got my example. I just need to practice. I need to go over it. I'm that person for an interview.
Yeah.
Me too.
So
Me too.
she was like,
"You got this."
Yeah.
And she did.
Yeah.
And she did it.
She did. So
I
proud of her.
appreciate it. Thank you.
So when you're in interviews, right, it should be more of a conversation. I like conversational interviews. Sometimes it can't always be that way, but it's a two-way streak, right? When you're going into an interview, you're trying to also, as the person trying to seek the job, you want to make sure that this is somewhere you're going to be comfortable at. So many people are probably miserable in their jobs because they didn't take note during those interviews to assess the environment or assess the manager that's interviewing them and seeing how they're going to be, right? So what are some of the questions as an interviewee that you can be asking them, right? So you're making sure that you're getting what you need as well as them.
Yeah, I love it when it's conversational. It should be conversational.
Yeah.
It is a two-way street for sure. There are some places that I would say absolutely no to, that I would never want to work. Why? Because I have my list of things that matter.
Right.
It really is important for you to really narrow down what's important about this job. Okay, they have to pay you. You should negotiate. I'm a big believer that that's part of my packages. However, what are some of the core things? What do you value? Do you value work-life balance? And what does that look like for you? Is work-life balance having a 9 to 5? Is work-life balance being able to have a flexible schedule? And so then you package that into a question. So what does the work schedule look like? What is a successful person who finishes this role look like? And so they may say, oh, it's somebody who works 80 hours a week. We love Bill. Bill works 80 hours off the books, Saturday and Sunday when nobody's here. He is awesome. You may not want to work somewhere like that, because if that's what you equate to success, then that's not who I am. We're going to have a problem. You can already tell that's going to be a no.
Right.
But if you say that, it's Susie Q, who, she is amazing. She's awesome. She works a flexible schedule. She only comes in 35 hours a week, because she just had a baby, but she's still doing an amazing job. That may be a place that you want to work because, you want that flexible schedule. What does it look like to, in the times of COVID? You need to ask whether or not this is a hybrid situation. Is it fully remote? Will I have to come in 100% eventually? I don't think people are getting a little comfortable with the remote working. You want to ask, are you going to bring me into the office 100% at some point in time? Right. What does that look like? You want to ask about the team that you would support. What does that look like? What problem will you solve when you come in? You're bringing me in. What do you have on your plate? If a company is giving a budget to hire someone, that means that there is a problem to solve, and you have to figure out how what are they trying to solve and how you can equate that to you serving as an asset. What are the plans? What are the future plans for the next 90 days that you have for me in this role? And then finally, I love when people ask the question of, is there any additional information that you could tell me about the role? And is there any information that is ambiguous, my experience that's ambiguous to you, that you need me to clarify? When people ask those questions, they get a lot more than what they want, because sometimes they don't meet the qualifications. Sometimes they're not right for this role. Which brings on the conversation of how can we move you to the right position? And then if they ask about the position in more detail, they're going to get more information out of me than my little summary that I was giving or whatever. They're asking for that additional information. So you want it to if you're making a big purchase, you ask a lot of questions.
You should.
This is an investment. And so you want to ask those questions that are pertaining to you. And not just the money questions, but the mental, the physical well-being, the workload of the job. You want to ask those type of questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are executive level questions that people at the top are asking.
And I think it takes some of the pressure off too, because if you're in an interview, you're already kind of, your nerves a little bit and you're a little tense. And I think when you're putting it on someone else to talk, it gives you some time to pull
yourself together.
Right. Yeah. And I think I mean, it's a simple question, but to me, one of the things that kind of helps, like, oh, you can see like, oh, this place is a mess, is asking them like, what in this role, what are some of the sore spots or some of the pain spots that you've seen with candidates or the team? Because if those sore spots are not aligning with you, or you're feeling like, okay, they got me coming into a what show.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and I also like asking the question of I ask it in a different way, but basically asking, is this a new role? Like, am I fulfilling a new position, or am I replacing someone that just matriculated out, right? Because I know a lot of times in the interviews when I've asked those questions, they're like, you're either picking up somebody's workload and they need you to be able to jump right in, or the team is growing so well that, you're being able to come in and you'll be able to have someone to probably show you the way versus someone that's left and they kind of just need you to figure it out. Right. So I think that's a really helpful question to ask as well.
It is. I agree.
Yep. And so researching, because you said like when you get in the interview, not knowing or just not even knowing what you're bringing to the table, or having that experience and then being like, oh, I didn't think about bringing it up, right? So researching the position. What do you feel like they should be researching? Because sometimes, whether you're applying internally or externally can make a difference in what you can research, what you have access to as far as being able to research a manager or whatever. But what do you feel like you should research for the position, and where can you research those things?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I would always say if you know who you're interviewing with, I mean, you got LinkedIn now. Go ahead and go ahead and check their LinkedIn. It's okay. They expect it. They're checking your LinkedIn. It's all right. Yeah, so check all the panelists, LinkedIn. Yeah. Another thing that I tell people is, look into who this person is connected to. I can't tell you how many times I received an email and said, hey, Courtney, I see you connected to Belinda. I'm interviewing for a position with her. Okay, what can you tell me? I'm gonna tell you one or two things. We're connected just because we're connected on LinkedIn. I really don't know her, Or, I used to work with her back X amount of years. I'm happy to reach out for you. Or I can tell you that, she has this amount of years of experience. She likes this, whatever. So it just kind of goes one or two ways. So you want to use your connections as well to kind of help you to conduct the research too. People that who've worked at the companies previously or currently can help you with the experience. They can tell you whether or not it's a show in the company currently, or if it's a transition, new leadership, restructuring, whatever's going on. They can tell you about that, and they also can tell you personally how they feel about the company. So this is all research that you can conduct. If it's a publicly traded company, there's always a lot of insight on publicly traded companies. And then so you've got that research to do, and then you got to do the self-research, as we talked about before, making sure that you have the experience, the skill set, and the background. So it's twofold. And so you've got tons of resources. You got the internet. I mean, like literally get into a deep, dark, rabid YouTube hole that we've all ended up seeing in the world, jump over a plane, and you don't know how you got there.
Right.
For this job. Just get down into that hole and just research and talk to and move as much as you can so that you're equipped for that conversation.
Yeah. And if you're at that point in the, some people pay for the, I think it's like $30 a LinkedIn premium. Like you can search secretly. Like you don't have to be, it'll say that thing of like someone in legal field, like looked at your resume, but it won't say who. So that's the thing. If you're worried about, I don't want to look weird, or I don't want to seem, if you're paying for LinkedIn, that's an option in terms of seeing how you're viewed when you search for people. And
it used to be free for 30 days.
That is true.
So you may be able to do it for your 30 days
and cancel. So, set that reminder. Because they will charge you. And the internal, like I think people are fans of now the virtual coffee. Before, if you work like uptown or whatever, you can meet somebody for coffee and kind of reach out. For me as an introvert, it used to be kind of awkward. But just that email of like, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm thinking about transitioning. I have an interest in what you do. Would love to talk about your experience. Like most people are really open to a phone call and to just kind of talk about what they do. And I've rarely been told no, like when I would reach out and do that. So Yeah.
That is true.
Mm-hmm.
And then to that, so I think what you're talking about is like before you have an interview, like just generally seeing how
Yeah, like
department
as you're
is,
interested
right?
and you're just learning more. Yeah.
Right. How do you feel about reaching out to somebody that's on the team prior to an interview if it's internal? Is that a no-no?
If you're saying if you're saying the person that's interviewing is internal or
yeah, like so say I'm interviewing and I've went and looked up the manager, saw who was under her team, and I'm just gonna pick a person, more than likely probably that looks like me, but I'm just gonna pick a random person, to go and talk to, like before, not knowing if they're a panelist on the interview or anything, but I've secured an interview and just trying to figure out like the environment of that. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea. Anytime you can get any type of insight or inside track, I think you should go for it. I think aside from that, if the person's on the panel, clearly you don't want to do that.
Right.
But if the person is not, it's fair game.
Right.
And you're there, you definitely can use the alias of the company. Sit down and meet. And people want you to be successful for the most part. There's a few that do not or do not care, I will say. But for the most part, people reach out to you. They take it as kind of their honor that you thought enough of their experience and their background that they have something that they can share with you to help you propel your career. I mean, that's how I look at it.
Yeah,
I think it's a major thing. Yeah. Like I'm always very honored when people reach out to me about experience or about, how did you get into this?
Yeah.
Because that means you value what I bring to the table.
Right.
And me responding to you means that I value you going to the table even better than me.
Right.
Like I want you to go even in a better situation than me. So I always say, no, people are your greatest asset. Like that's one of the taglines of the Career Society. I help to protect the greatest asset of any company, and that's your people. So it's the same way as a professional. People are your greatest asset. They can give you so much insight that, Wikipedia or anything, they can tell you. They're going to give you that on the ground experience. So don't be afraid. Be an introvert. You could be an introvert after you get done with the conversation. But fake it in that conversation. And have that, and just have your questions, have some questions together, make it 15, 20 minutes and then get out, get what you need and get out. So.
And so for interviews, just like down some of the basics types of interviews that I don't think we've talked about that, like the kind of questions that might be presented in the interview. I know we talked about like having that experience and being able to talk to your experience, but like what type of questions? I know, like I'm thinking about behavioral questions, right? But like what type of questions do you generally see in an interview?
So you see behavior typically when you make it to the next round. It's typically behavior questions. In all fairness, secrets out. Behavior questions are really, it's like the standardized test. Okay. The SAT, LSAT, those sorts of things. It's really easy to grade. It's really big. Why? Because there's an equation that goes with behavior questions. It's the STAR method. You go to situation, task, action, result. I teach my clients, I put a plus. So I teach the STAR plus method. What is the plus? What did you learn from all of that? As you're giving that example to tie it all in. And not trying to make a negative into a positive, because it's a negative question.
Right.
There are also technical questions. Typically, your screen is going to be technical questions. So, how many years of experience do you have in here? Provide me with an example of some of the projects that you've led as a Scrum Master or as an attorney. They're going to be very factual questions that you'll be able to pinpoint into your background. But the behavior questions are more, I like to say, it's more of a song and dance. So it's still your experience, but it's like, even think about the storytelling of it all. If you don't tell the story of a behavior question correctly, it can go really bad.
Right.
I used to work with students. I can vividly remember one. She was a very bright young lady. And then we were like, well, tell us about a time when you failed and you didn't meet a deadline. I have never missed a deadline. I've always done it. There's nothing, you've never fell off a bike. Like, you didn't lie to your parents. Like, you didn't stick a boy in the house. Like, you're telling me your whole entire life, you've been on the up and I'm getting warm doing the prep for her. So imagine what someone else on the other end of the table feels. Then you got people that are too negative. You know, hey, I was on drugs at one point in time, and you know, I was out on the streets, and you know, and this, that, and the third, and then I changed my way. Like, it's too negative.
It's too
Like,
much.
it's too much. Reel it back in, okay? So, like, it's a balance between the two. It's a balance. Like, same people, same experience, but again, it's the storytelling. It's the balance of it all. Boundaries.
That just threw me off.
I mean, it's we're keeping it real goes wrong. Now we didn't ask for that.
Lord.
My last question is probably a softball for you because you're probably biased on this. We know how you feel about cover letters. How do you feel about that thank you letter or email? And what is your opinion on resume services? Are they worth the cost?
Both good questions. I absolutely love thank you cards. I've tried to keep every last thank you letter that I've ever received. But from, you know, I think it's just a nice touch. I know you can't really do that with COVID right now. I did have someone that went out of their way to like do some computer program thank you note, which I thought was nice, to send it via email. You know, what I tell my clients is to send an email just to quickly follow up, and then put something in the mail immediately. Have your thank you cards ready, and then get an address and send it to them. With the times of COVID, you may not have an address. They may be at their house. So, you know, they may not want to receive it. So, you know, it may be a loss. Hopefully it'll come back. But right now it's kind of in an impasse.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love thank you cards. I think they're just one of the most elegant and classy things that you can do as a person. You know, take the time out to do that. When it comes to what was the other question?
Resume services.
Thank you. Oh, the resume service. Yes. I will say this about the resume service. I offer resume services, but I offer them with conditions. But I used to just take a resume, like, you know, somebody was like, "Can you do my resume for me?" "Yeah, I can do your resume, girl." Do the resume and go on. And I got feedback sometimes that that allowed me to know that sometimes people can become entitled with that. They don't want to do the work. So because I touched your resume, you think that you should get every job you apply to. It's not like that.
Right.
And so instead of me focusing on the resume service, like doing your resume, giving it to you, then telling you to go on, I will not touch a resume unless you have some teaching of how to use it. So even though you may sign up for the resume service, no, I have a session where we're going to talk about how you will effectively use this resume. If you're not going to do my coaching packages, like, that's the only way that I will agree to do a resume. I think it's the right thing to do. I think that that people do, they get that impression. I understand. I was like, rightfully so. They feel like they paid for it. They don't, but they don't understand the value that they hold. So I made you into this person, but you can't speak to this person. So now you're mad with me because you don't know the person on the paper who happens to be you.
Right.
So to avoid that, and to make sure that I focus on the educational part when it comes to career services, I make sure that I have that component there for people.
Got you. And that makes sense.
That's
and
good
it's definitely a value add, right? So we are going to let you get out of here, but we will have Courtney back to speak about this resignation flex and to understand negotiating, getting that promotion or chucking the deuce, whatever it is you're trying to do. We will have her back very soon. We thank you so much for being here, and tell the people where they can find you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me, ladies. So you can find me on Facebook, Courtney Rhodes. I have a big old fro, so you can you'll see me on there.
It's beautiful too.
I love it.
Oh, thank you. You can also find me on Instagram at Career Whisper. You know, either one of those, or you can reach out to me at the Career Society. So the easiest way to reach out to me is you can directly email me, Courtney at thecareersociety.com. I'm happy to help you, assist you with any of your next steps when it comes to your career.
All right, y'all, and we will have that information in our episode notes. So that is all we have for today. But if you have questions, comments, shenanigans to have possibly read on an episode, divaadvice@gmail.com. We are on Facebook and Instagram, Divas and Ducats, and www.divasandducats.com. Subscribe below if you haven't already.
That's right.
Do you have anything else?
I don't. Just telling you guys to have a great attitude, and we thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and share.
All right.
All right. Bye.